What's up?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see you, bro.
It's good to see you too, man. Good to see you too.
Yeah. Are you at home?
I'm at home. Is enough light? I need to get in some more light.
I don't know. I have one of these little lights up here, so that's what mine's
Oh,
on. But you good.
I'm good. Okay. Good,
If
man.
if that's where you're comfortable, it's all good.
That's good.
We got a few people joining us. I see a few people. What's up, y'all? Um, yeah, so I appreciate you doing this, man. Thanks for doing this live with me.
Man, you're welcome. You know I always like to be with you, bro. You're my boy.
Yeah.
Love you, man.
Yeah, what I appreciate about it is we get to have this conversation and share the content that gives people who otherwise may not be in DC or engaged with Emory the opportunity to learn about who you are, what you do, and even your role in the book. So I'm pretty excited about that because we'll be able to use the content to share, share the wisdom of your journey. And I do have a number of questions. So um, yeah, so let's just jump into it. Maybe we'll take, we'll see how much time we want to take and run through it. But
Okay. Sounds
so
good.
most people who know me know that you're one of my closest friends and my pastor. I still claim Emory Fellowship as my home church. Hey, what's happening, Vance? Good to see you, brother. And Vance is a part of the Fave Five with Rudy and Paul and Rob. But one of the things that I've always admired about you is your ability to cast vision, and not only cast vision, but uh, how you stick to the intention of seeing it through, right? And what that looks like, because a lot of people talk about vision, uh, but to see it through and be patient with the process is more than a notion. So with that, I know you pastor Emory Fellowship, but you also have the nonprofit, the Beacon Center, and a housing project that I believe at one point when you guys opened was rated one of the like top real estate projects in Washington D.C.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what a lot of people don't know is the backstory. So um, I want to start with why don't you share with us what the project is, what you guys
Sure.
did first.
Sure. So we had an issue in our neighborhood. We're a church that's out in the community, and what we kept hearing from people that we serve, that we worship with, is, I need an affordable place to live. I'm being priced out of the neighborhood. I can't afford to live here. In some cases, I'm homeless. I'm living in a car, living in an alley, and so we embarked upon a mission to provide affordable housing to people who were marginalized and disenfranchised, and to people who were being displaced from the city. Um, and that's what the mission was all about. We ended up building 99 units of affordable rental housing for people at 60% of the average median income in the District of Columbia. Um, at the time we built 4 years ago, the average median income of the city was $120,000 a year. Uh, the average median income for a white family of four was also $120,000 a year. The average median income for a Latino family of four was $41,000 a year. The average median income for an African American family of four, $38,000 a year. So we're talking about an $80,000 a year. It's between $80,000 and $100,000 now. Wealth gap between whites and Latinos and blacks. And so we committed ourselves, 400 of us, to do whatever we could to at least put a dent in this issue, and to provide people affordable housing. We built 99 units of affordable housing, $60 million project, commercial space, congregational sanctuary renovation. But the primary focus was on, we need to house people who are moving from homelessness to permanent residency. We need to house people who make up the infrastructure of this city, but literally are being displaced because of the rising costs.
Right. So these were people who work in the city, but otherwise could not afford to live in the city.
You got it. Your teachers, your firefighters, your hotel employees, service employees, your restaurant workers, waiters, your pastors, in a lot of cases, people who are infrastructure employees in businesses and government and the like, who the city depends on to survive, but who can't afford to live in the city.
Yeah, one of the things, so you did 400 people, basically the congregation and leaders came together.
400 working class people.
400 working class people came together with the vision for affordable housing in the city in Washington, D.C., and embarked on a $60 million project.
You got it.
To provide 99 units of housing. And what I really appreciate about it is I remember, because if any of you who are watching haven't seen it, go online and pull up Emory Fellowship, or they should probably pull up
if they go to the beaconcenter.org, they can, or residences at the beaconcenter.org, they'll see it. Residences at the beaconcenter.org.
Residences at the beaconcenter.org, and you will see that the beautiful thing about this project is that these 99 units of housing are in almost like a U shape, if you will, and a part of that is the church is connected to the housing. And I remember when you were sharing the designs and groundbreaking and the building, and a lot of people would build a bigger sanctuary. And I remember asking you, like, man, the sanctuary doesn't look much bigger. And you were like, yeah, we added a few more seats, but the vision was for the community and housing, not for a sanctuary.
Right.
And, that stuck with me because I've only seen that one other time where, and hanging out with a pastor and looking at the vision for the community, and the emphasis wasn't on a sanctuary, but when we're together in the city, we walk around and I'm like, oh, for Joe, the community is the sanctuary. Like this entire neighborhood, everything around it is where the work of the church and being in community as the church happens. It's not just in this one room, this sanctuary on Sunday morning. And that was really inspiring to see that the community is the congregation. And I've always appreciated that.
That's the fact of the matter is, and if people go to beaconcenterresidences.com, they'll be able to see it. Beaconcenterresidences.com. But the fact of the matter is, as you pointed out, your community is your congregation, and a congregation or a church that doesn't recognize that reality is irrelevant, essentially, because you have no connection to community. Congregation is people, community is people. And unless you engage with people holistically, you really can't meet people's needs. I've always looked at salvation. The church historically has made salvation a spiritual decision. You walk the aisle, give your life to Christ, and that's it. But when you look at the root word salvation, which comes from the original biblical Greek word sozo, it literally means to be made complete, to be healed, to be made whole. And so unless you are offering the gift of salvation from a holistic point of view, unless you're looking at salvation as the whole person, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, financial, unless you're dealing with the whole person, you're not offering people the full gift of what Jesus Christ has given to us. And for so long, churches have only offered just the spiritual aspect. But if you're not dealing with mind, if you're not dealing with relationships, you're not dealing with one's body, one's finances, then you're missing the boat. And I think a lot of people have run away from church because of that very reality. But people run to church, or they run to a church or a faith community when they see that community really dealing with the holistic nature of an individual.
Now, you pointed out the holistic nature. I know Emory Fellowship has a slogan, if you will. And
Yeah.
share that slogan with everybody.
Well, our whole vision is simply leading people to whole lives, and whole for us is an acronym.
Yeah.
Well physically, W, well physically, H, healed emotionally, O, obedient spiritually, L, loved unconditionally, and the E is empowered financially. Well physically, healed emotionally, obedient spiritually, loved unconditionally, empowered financially. You're dealing with the whole person. And when we deal with that, when we're able to engage in that, then we're able to not only lead ourselves, but also lead others to this promise that Jesus has given to us.
Yeah. Now, I love that salvation from really incorporates every aspect of a person's life, um,
Yeah.
soul and social, right? Uh,
Yes.
Now, with that, you mentioned that you have the 99 units of housing, but you said there was commercial space as well. What are you guys doing with that?
So we're in the process of literally building a restaurant and cafe that will serve organic food, because we deal with food insecurity through our ministry as well. But we're looking to be able to serve organic food in the hood, but also with this restaurant cafe to provide culinary arts training for returning citizens, because we also have the matter of returning citizens that is really happening strong in the District of Columbia. And so, our brothers and sisters return from being incarcerated. Where do they go? Where do they work? How can they support themselves? Where do they live? Right. And so, in within the mantra of providing affordable housing, we're also trying to feed people, but we're also trying to employ people. And restaurants in DC, as you know, Ramal, because you're a restaurateur yourself. DC has huge restaurant community, and restaurants are one place where uh, people coming back from being incarcerated can find jobs and can get connected. And so we're trying to tap into the training aspect of that in order to be able to support this community that is so much a part of who we are.
Wow. Now, so you mentioned you have this housing, you're providing jobs, opening a restaurant, all of these business components. Um, it's interesting because on the one hand, I'm thinking this requires multiple skill sets, right? And
Yeah.
and that's important because I have oftentimes had conversations with people in ministry who have many gifts, talents, and abilities that they were living into prior to, or physicians, attorneys, engineers, working in cybersecurity, whatever aspects of technology and innovation. But when they decided to go into ministry, it's as if they left those things behind because something led them to believe that serving in ministry did not require the use of those gifts and talents, that it was solely about just doing what some would just call, quote unquote, the work of the church. But
Right.
what I hear you saying is that you bring all of who you are to the service of what you're called to, that you bring your medical skills, your technology skills, your
Yeah.
artistic expression. Nothing has to be sacrificed on the altar of service, but that all of it is welcomed. And that's how you are able to now engage in meeting the needs of people spiritually and socially in very much a holistic way.
Exactly. That's huge. And you are a model of that, right? there isn't any aspect of your life that you are not using right now in order to fulfill God's calling on your life. Every aspect of of your life, every experience. Same with me. Okay. I had a career before ministry. I was in communications. For a while I was in broadcast journalism, and for a while I was in print journalism, right? Well, I'm communicating the gospel every week. I'm writing. I'm writing books. I'm writing articles. I'm using my communication skills on a regular basis. For me to say, oh, well, I was a journalist, I don't need that anymore, I'm now, a pastor and preacher, that's foolish. Okay. For me not to use entrepreneurial skills that I have, for you not to use the entrepreneurial skills you have, we would be cheapening again the gift of salvation that God has given us. And so we need to be able, and we need to use every tool that we've been given. Our life experiences, our life stories, all of those things play into God's purpose and plan for our lives.
Yeah, I think that's an important message for a lot of people to know, that you do not have to leave behind the skills and ability and even the passion for things in order to serve, but you can bring them with you, and they allow you to be all of who you are, as an expression of being made whole.
Yeah.
And how you are able to meet the needs of other people. I think Emory is a place where people truly get to live that out, through its various ministry opportunities, be that ministry opportunity to create housing, affordable housing for people, or even jobs through other businesses like restaurants and job skills and things of that sort, that all of it is a part of what ministry looks like.
Exactly. I remember one day we were talking, driving around the city one day, and you asked me, you said, Joe, what's your 6-word purpose? Right. And I had to think about it for a minute. And then I came back to you and I said, he helps broken people become whole. Well, there's a whole lot of different ways that I do that based upon my life stories. And you're very proficient in talking about story and the importance of story and the importance of people sharing story in many respects. Our story is filled with so much of our background, so much of our skills, so many of our mistakes, right? Our shortcomings, but all of that plays into being a blessing to somebody's life. And as we make that happen, we can transform lives and transform communities.
Now, I want to come back to the project, 99 units of housing, $50 million project, working on a restaurant, other business services. When was the ribbon cutting? What year was that the property opened?
So we wanted to make a statement to the community. And so the apartments were actually finished before the sanctuary. And so we had our ribbon cutting on March the 13th, 2019. And, we had the ceremony in the sanctuary, but we didn't move into the sanctuary till April. But we cut ribbon on the units on March 13th, and folks moved in right away. And it was a powerful moment.
March 2019. That's important. I want people who watch this tonight and later to remember that. The ribbon cutting and opening of the housing was March of 2019, before the sanctuary ever opened, to show people where the priority was too. It sent a message that we are meeting your need first before we even begin to worship in this place. Yep. But my question that I was getting to is, when did you first have the vision for this project?
Wow. God speaks vision, and God shows vision in increments. God first started showing me this in the spring of 1994, because I've been at Emory for a little more than 31 years. There used to be a cleaners across the street from us, Tony's Martinizing, which was the most popular cleaners in Northwest DC. Everybody would come to Tony's Martinizing. and I was in there, with a handful of shirts. And one day I turned and looked out the window back over to where the church was, and the Lord started talking to me. You're going to redevelop that property one day, because literally, our church sat on the corner of Crack Alley, where we had an abandoned apartment next to the church. Crack was being sold there, heroin sold there, squatters were in the apartments, but that's where Vision started.
Wow. So vision, God began to give you the vision for developing this property in what year?
1994.
1994.
You got it.
And it did not open and actually happen until March of 2019.
You got it.
So that's an important point for many of us to understand, that because a lot of people want to rush vision. Right?
You can't rush Vision, right?
Yeah,
You
the
can't.
assumption is that,
Go ahead.
the vision, it must mean it's going to happen right now.
Right. And I teach that vision, it like you're saying, it takes time. And vision to me happens when three things intersect. First of all, the leader's S apostrophe, the leader's purpose has to be flushed out. The congregation's passion has to be tapped into. And then the community's cry, or the community's voice, has to be identified. And it's where those three things intersect that God speaks vision. But you don't even get to that point until you've done the purpose work with yourself and your leaders, until you tap into what your congregation is really passionate about. What is it that these group of people are found doing, whether you're around them or not? They just do this. And then what is your community really crying for? Because our communities are crying for a lot. Our community voice is very, very strong on a number of issues, but what is the one, or what are the two cries that really meet where your congregation's passion is, and really meet where your leadership's purpose is? It's where those three intersect that there's a sweet spot in which God speaks vision. And to your point, Ramal, it's not a quick deal. One of the mistakes I made early on was that I saw that glimpse of a vision in the cleaners, and I thought, okay, bam, I got it. I didn't have it all. I started coming back, communicating toward vision, but one of the mistakes I made was thinking that I had vision, and I'm a part of the vision, right? As the pastor, I have to cast vision. I'm the vision caster. But vision involves all these people. And if you're not in tune with what God is doing with all these folk, then you miss the mark. Fortunately, we were able, my purpose is building people. That's what I do. I seek to build and encourage and build up folks. Emery's passion was helping people at their greatest point of need. Emery will try to help somebody suffering in a minute. Okay, somebody's struggling and suffering, they show up. It's like, how can we help you, right? The community was saying, I need help because I can't afford to live here. And where those three things jived, bam.
Yeah,
and so we need affordable housing, not market rate housing, because we were tempted and pressured to build market rate, and we'd have walked away with a ton of money. But we were not going to be the church that sold out on this community, building market rate housing, when the community was saying, I need an affordable place to live.
Wow. What I appreciate about that, and the journey of the leader learning over time through living in community, what his or her purpose truly is in that, by discerning for themselves, but also being in relationship with the community. Because one of the things, you know, we learn in the work of serving others in community is that if you're going to build people, you also need their permission, right?
Right. Right.
'Cause
Right.
people, you
Right.
can't create opportunities for people that they didn't ask for, and you can't just assert yourself into their lives and say, hey, here's what we've decided that you need, without your permission, without getting to know you, without knowing your name, your life experience, the challenges you face. We looked around ourselves and made this decision. Typically, that type of approach does not work, because you have not lived in relationship with people, built their trust, and as a result of that, now have their permission to engage their lives in ways that are collaborative, right?
Exactly. Yep. 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 Exactly. We so often churches, organizations want to do for instead of do with, right? And if you're not in relationship, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You got to be in relationship with people, listening to people. As we listen, we can identify, and
Yeah,
together.
I found that listening uh, also requires the discipline of not centering yourself in someone else's story.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I like, you know, you travel the world. You do ministry and service all over the world, right? Um, I, I first I first was enlightened to what listening was all about. I heard the Chinese definition for listening coming from the Chinese symbol for listening. You know, Chinese words are written in symbols, and there are three words that come out of the Chinese symbol for listening: um, seeing, hearing, and feeling. And so in for the Chinese, if it doesn't look right, if it don't sound right, if it don't feel right, it ain't right. I carried that definition when I was doing a piece with you in Ghana. And I remember one of the Ghanaian bishops saying, "Brother Joe, there's a fourth piece." I said, "What's that?" He said, not only do we here in Ghana look for, listen for, and feel for, he said, but fourthly, then listening for us involves moving.
Mm.
And so you got to do, once you see it, hear it, and feel it, you got to do something about it.
Mm.
And that all is encompassed in being able to, as you said, not to get so much involved in our story that we are not seeing, hearing, feeling somebody else's story, so that we can move appropriately together.
Yeah, because it informs to know when to move, right? I always
Right.
tell people, you know, you had, let me back into this, 400 people congregation, um, taking on a $60 million project. What happens with people oftentimes, they look at the size and determine what they're capable of. Oh, we're too small to do that. We don't have enough people to do that, right? It's
Right.
like they defeat themselves before ever thinking, without ever giving it a shot.
Right.
And Emory and the people did not start there, right?
Right.
And what I find is that requires believing God is who God says God is, right?
Right.
And that it is possible. And a lot of people focus on the money before they have the vision. And a donor I work with when I'm fundraising always says to me, Ramal, provision always follows vision.
That's
And
it.
you know, biblically, the word is in Habakkuk, write the vision.
Right.
It doesn't
Division.
write the budget, right?
Right. Right.
It starts with vision. You know, provision follows vision. And so you
Yep.
got to write the vision, and God will make provision. And it also says in that same text, though it tarry, wait for it, right? So it's
Yep.
going to take a while, but wait for it. It's coming. And a lot of people we need to understand that waiting, you can work while you wait.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that waiting time is not wasted time.
Waiting time is not wasted time.
No.
That's a
Not
good.
at,
Yeah.
Not at all.
What kind of work were you doing to build the relationships? Because you don't just find $65 million. You have to partner with people, right? What's the importance of collaboration in order to get a project like that done?
So collaboration is everything. And this gets back to your point of, you can't rush the vision. You've got to build. And part of that is the collaboration of relationships. And so we had to do a lot of learning at Emory. I had to do a lot of teaching. I had to do a lot of exposing people. We had to expose people to different learnings. In particular, we did a lot of learning around the power of one-on-one relational building, not only with people who you know, but with strangers. And we did a lot of teaching around how every community, whether it's urban, suburban, rural, exurban, or whatever, how every community functions. And every community functions on three sectors. There's the private sector, there's the government sector, there's a public sector, okay? And unless you do the relational one-on-one meetings and building relationships across these sectors, we couldn't have done what we did, okay? So we were having one-on-one relational meetings with high-level people at Fannie Mae. We were having relational one-on-one meetings with high-level people in government, with the mayor, with city council persons. We were having relational one-on-ones with folk on the street. And we combined all of those to be able to hear clearly again what vision was, and to be able to stick to vision once we were clear about what it was God wanted to do. So we did countless one-on-one relational meetings with people across all those sectors. And that not only helped us to formalize vision, but it also helped us to build key relationships with people who were in position to be able to leverage monies for us that otherwise we would not have been able to attain. 400 people built 400 working class people built a $60 million project. We ain't had 60 million. What we did was we leveraged our assets and this community of 400 working class, and I keep emphasizing working class because we have people take out second jobs and third jobs to meet their pledges. We raised 1.4 million, which surprised all of us, but we did it. And then we leveraged our property. And when you go to an entity, when you're a church, and you go to government or you go to private industry with a project, they're used to you coming and begging from them. We need you to give us this. We went to them and said, we've got skin in the game. We raised 1.4 million, over 400 people. We have our property. We want to leverage it. Let's play ball. And folk were like, well, damn, y'all did that. And when we did that, that positioned us to be able to leverage, to be able to ask in areas, and it positioned us to have people who would then fight for us to gain resources and money.
What I appreciate about what you're saying is you said, 400 working class people with a vision to build 99 units of affordable housing that was going to cost $60 million to get it done. Yeah. And so you had vision, and we know that provision follows vision. But you said we went to people we know and people we did not know. We had to build new relationships. So the other part of provision is saying, hey, you know what? We don't have $60 million. So the question now becomes, where do we need to position ourselves where they do have $60 million? And so it's now we have to now push ourselves to cultivate new relationships in a place where we now position ourselves to cultivate the relationships to have access to the resources that we need. In essence, the resources are available. It's the question then becomes, where do we need to position ourselves to access those available resources?
Exactly, exactly. And will we have the courage? Will we have the faith? Will we have the persistence to do the kind of relational building that's necessary to be able to access the resources? Okay, this project covered 4 mayors. Okay, 4 mayors in 4 different administrations, and so every time a mayoral administration changed, we had new relationships we had to build, because we may have had support under the Barry administration. Yep, the mayor for life, right? But then after Barry comes Anthony Williams, and after Anthony Williams comes Adrian Fenty. After Fenty comes Gray. This thing actually covered 5 mayors. Then after Gray comes Bowser. And unless we've been doing that constant one-on-one relational building across government, let alone private sector, it doesn't get done. And so this takes time. It takes persistence. It takes teaching. It takes working to help congregants understand that church is not just worship on Sunday morning, but it's also being active participants in civic engagement in community, and the importance of civic engagement, teaching young people civic engagement, teaching people the power of community organizing, the fact that we may think we don't have power, but we all have power because we have the ability to act, we have the ability to do something. And so as we're teaching people this and engaging people this and celebrating wins, little by little by little wins, that's how this thing got built over time. And a whole lot of prayer and a whole lot of persistence and a whole lot of patience.
Now, you actually have written a book that talks about this journey. You've written several books.
Yeah.
And can you share what are the names of those books, and just give us a snippet of what each book is about?
So the first book was entitled Begging for Real Church. And I wrote that book out of a time period where even young adults within our congregation were saying, we're coming too churchy. And I said, well, what does it mean to become too churchy? And they really couldn't explain to me. And so I went to the book of Acts and began to really study, what is real church? And real became an acronym for relevant, enthusiastic, authentic, and loving. And that came out of the story of the beggar in Acts chapter 3. It's the first story after Pentecost, which was a street revival. And Peter and John are on their way to the temple to heal folk, right? And this beggar is sitting there, and the beggar is begging. And what Peter and John offer the beggar is not the money that he was begging for. What they saw was he needed to walk. And so they literally offer him, when you read that story, a relevant and enthusiastic and authentic and loving experience. And the man gets up and walks. Okay. And so, so that book and my second book, The Power of Real, Changing Lives, Changing Churches, Changing Communities, focus on what it means to be relevant across congregation, but also community. What does it mean to be relevant? What does it mean to speak to the human condition of people and lift them up? That's what being relevant is. Not just speaking to the condition, but lifting people out of the human condition. What does it mean to be enthusiastic? Enthusiastic, the word comes from a Greek word, enthusiasmos, which means to be possessed by God so that I can inspire people for God.
Mm.
So what does it mean to literally be immersed in the will and way of God for our lives, and then inspire people through that? You're a master at that, Attune. You're a master at that possession and inspiration. Being authentic, being down to earth, genuine, real, right?
And
And
then
then
you have
love.
another book, though. You have
The
Walking.
third book, the third book is Walking with Nehemiah. Your community is your congregation. That's the title of the book. And so literally the real concept then goes into, okay, how do I help people identify heartbreak? Because once we are able to identify and help people identify what causes our hearts to break, then we'll know who we need to be in ministry with and where that ministry needs to take place.
Mm.
And so we look at the story of Nehemiah and how his heart broke over home, over Jerusalem, over his people who were in the margins. And he's like, I got to help them. And how he begins to journey back home and the steps he takes in order to take a vision and then bring that vision to an actual reality. That's the third book. I co-authored a fourth book entitled Connecting for a Change, which looks at how to inspire people, churches, and communities to bring about hope in their communities. And so those four books I'm working on. Those four books I've published. I'm working on a couple of other books as we speak,
Now,
dealing
you've
with
written
this.
4 books and working on another, but you are in a book called I Wish My Dad.
Yeah.
If, for those of you who are watching and will watch this later, if you really want to get a sense of Joe Daniels' why and for the work that he does, you can look at his story and see how his why for the work that he does in community was cultivated early on in his life as he shares his story and his relationship with his father and the history and legacy of engagement with community and people that he inherited as a part of his family. In that book, in his chapter of I Wish My Dad. So in that regard, you've written books and you were compelled to share your story, a very intimate, personal story that is quite beautiful. And I Wish My Dad. How was that experience for you?
It was very powerful. It was very humbling. It was very emotional. But it literally helped me tap into more of who I am today. As you stated, I came from 2 parents who were justice people. My dad was engaged in civil rights. My mom, a school teacher, and they were very much engaged in social justice matters, in justice and fairness for people in the margins. And so I literally got that from them. And in particular, pertaining to my dad and the story that we talked about in um my dad faced a lot of pressure as a black man growing up in the 50s and then working into the 60s and 70s. And he had gotten to the point where he was director of equal employment opportunity for the Federal Reserve System. Direct report was the chair of the board. And they abolished his position 6 months before he was to retire because literally he was doing what they hired him to do. He was responsible for hiring more blacks, minorities, and women than at any other time in the Federal Reserve's history. And for that, they abolished his position because they didn't like the fact that he was doing what they hired him to do.
Now, in the book, you talk about his journey, you talk about your relationship. A couple of questions. I'm curious as to why do you shared your story, but why do you think it's important for men to talk about and share their stories of the relationship with their fathers as it relates to love, affection, and time? What value can do people gain from, looking back at those stories and reflecting on them?
I think it's vital, particularly in the work that I do. I think it's vital because I'm working with men all the time. I'm working with men in the streets. I'm working with men in the congregation, and I'm working with men in very sensitive and intimate settings because we're talking about faith and we're talking about relationship with family, relationship with children, and the like. And in order for me to be able to really communicate with brothers where they are, I have to be willing and able to be very transparent with my own stories. And so the part of the power of tapping into the story about my dad and the relationship between fathers and sons is typically, and you articulate this great in the book. Typically, we don't talk. We're, we don't talk to each other as brothers. We hold stuff in. My dad was famous for holding stuff in. I grew up holding stuff in. We were almost taught not to, don't let them see you sweat. Don't let them see you cry. Don't let them see you hurt, because it was a matter of survival in many respects for us. So the ability to really tap into talking about my father and I's relationship, and even around, the fact that his relationship with my mom went sour, and the struggles with that and the impact that had on my life. Really his and my even my going to therapy and dealing with therapy around it, all of that positions and has positioned me to identify my own heartbreak, to help brothers and sisters identify their heartbreaks, which then bring us into purpose, bring us into life purpose. And so the ability to talk about that in your book, um, the powerful stories that are in your book from other brothers who've been able to share their experiences around life with their dads. I think that really opens people up, and particularly with men, it opens men up to really be able to pursue what we've been talking about during this time on this IG Live, and that is, what role in community are we supposed to serve? What wholeness are we supposed to offer to people who are in need? And I got a lot of that from my father, with his struggles with justice, with his struggles with his relationship with my mother, and how all of that impacted. And I've been living it out, and I'm still living it out as I move forward today.
What do you think when you look at the story that you share about your dad, you are both a father, um, and you are a grandfather.
Grandfather.
Uh,
Right.
what what are the important things that you would want both readers of this book to take away and know about your dad? And also, what do you want your children and your grandchildren to know that's important about uh, their grandfather, and I guess great grandfather, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As it relates to who they are because of who he was. What do you want people to know broadly who read the book, and is that any different from what you would want your children and grandchildren to know about him?
I would want them to know everything about them. In fact, my son has said to me, "Dad, I want to know everything about Granddad." Um, and he said that to me prior to reading I Wish My Dad, and he's talked to me about it since. the book came out. And so my dad was a man of integrity. My dad was a class act. My dad was a tough dude. My dad was a dad loved by other peers of mine, other friends of mine who didn't have dads. They wanted to come talk to my dad. My dad also had flaws. My dad also had issues. My dad also had struggles. My dad had failed relationships. Um, I needed more time with my dad. I wanted more time with my dad. I didn't feel like I got enough time. My dad died too early. Okay. But yet, the story of my dad for me is that, I can keep getting up. I can keep overcoming. I can keep achieving. I can achieve to the highest of heights. And yet I can do that even experiencing the lowest of lows. And so, my message to my kids and what will be to my grandkids as they grow older is all of that: the good, the bad, the ugly, and the trifling. Because we all have good, bad, ugly, and trifling, and the ability to still overcome and live into purpose in spite of all that is just huge.
Yeah,
And
the
go
beauty
ahead.
the beauty of what I hear you saying is, um, all of he had his challenges, his mistakes, but he had the things that made him great. He had
Yeah,
integrity, he had courage,
yeah,
he fought for people, he was about community. And so these things are not in opposition. They are
no,
just that he was fully human, right?
right,
So
right,
they are not contradictions. It's
right.
just that he was a human.
He's a human.
And the beauty of being able to see all of who he was and hold all of it with open hands and offer grace to the broken parts and offer gratitude for the good things all at once. And
Yeah,
and knowing that who he was also shows up in who you are, right? You are part of his legacy and that he poured into you.
yeah,
And the reason I want to name that is because it's something that I have become more mindful of, which is to say, I have had a tendency to overemphasize the difficulties and challenges of my father and my upbringing and how to heal and overcome the trauma. My children are very well aware of the trauma narrative and where healing is necessary. But where I need to lean in more is into the reality of the good that I also received from these people who had their challenges.
right.
My resilience, my confidence, my courage, my love for other people did not start with me. It also flowed through my father, my grandfather, and my uncles.
Yep,
So I need my children to
yep,
know
yep.
that aspects of who I am are come from who they were, and aspects of who my children are, they are now a part of that legacy as well.
Yeah,
And the very good things that I see in them did not start with them or with me, but they were handed down from generation to generation.
yeah,
And it's important that they are clear that your identity and your values transcend you or me and really flow through a legacy in our family. And so, I've made up my mind to spend more time sharing with my son and my daughter. Like tomorrow, my son and I leave for a trip to spend a few days in Cuba, and I
yeah,
want to share with him the good things about my father.
yeah,
He was
yeah,
a he is he not was he is a courageous man. He's a confident person. He's a person of integrity. He's a person of strong values, and I see all of that in my son. And I want him to know that you are who you are because of who he is, and
yeah,
not because of who I am, but because of who he is and
yeah,
what his journey looked like.
yeah.
So none of it gets thrown away. You can hold the broken pieces with grace and forgiveness, but you can also hold with gratitude the good things that you receive from the people in your life who were not perfect. They were just simply human.
My dad and my mother were married 29 years. And I talk about this in your book. I Wish My Dad. They were married 29 years and separated after 29 years, right? And that has impacted our family even to this day. Even to this day, I'm impacted. My sister, my kids, my sister's kids, we're all impacted, right? So I could, to your point, I could lean on that quote unquote failure of relationship, or I could, or I can, or I can look at a lot of the positive things too, right? To your point. So, you know, I was going through pictures the other day. I ran into a picture that I'd seen several times but forgot about. Here's my dad in the Oval Office of the White House. Okay, here's my dad in the major meeting room in the White House, at the cabinet table where the president is around the table with all of his cabinet secretaries, and then behind them are their assistants, and behind them their assistants, and there's my father. Okay, so here's my father gone from carrying ice on his back as a poor boy in New Orleans, Louisiana, in order to bring money home so that the family could eat. You know, seemingly not having a chance in life, now sitting around the highest tables of power, um, bringing jobs to people who otherwise wouldn't have them, right? And so we've got to teach the stories, yeah, the struggle, but we got to teach the stories of the victories, of the triumphs, of the great things that our fathers and grandfathers. My grandfather was a Pullman car porter, right? Back in the 40s, right? I mean, he was cleaning out toilets. But for a black man to be a Pullman car porter in that day, that was big time. I just shared that with my son who didn't know. My son was like, "You got to be kidding me." I said, "Yeah." He's been reading a book, looking at documentaries on Pullman car porters. Yeah, I mean, these kinds of things we need to teach our kids. We need to be proud of them. Even the stories that we're not proud of, we need to tell them, because all of it
And
makes
what I
us.
find is, yes, we need to hold, not in opposition or intention, but hold them with grace. The difficulties
Yeah,
and victories, the flaws
yeah,
and the greatness of a person, because it allows us to see ourselves the same way. We have our
right.
flaws and we have our greatness.
Yeah,
And I think it's important to always understand is that sometimes when we've been hurt by someone in our family, especially a parent, we have this tendency to want to lean into the pain story, right?
right.
When at some point we have to accept that this pain narrative doesn't serve me well. And so as a result, I desire to be free from it. But we
Yeah,
hold the pain story and never talk about how good they were or the great things that they did
yeah,
in a in an effort to continue to punish them. So I
right.
will punish you by not even talking about the good that you are.
Yeah,
When the reality is that by withholding that, you're not able to even truly see all of who you are, because you are both your difficulties and you are your greatness and
yeah,
your gifts. And so being able to forgive and hold gently the flaws of others allows you to do the same for yourself,
right.
and being able to see those flaws in someone else, even especially a parent, and hold that with the good and the great that they are, allows you to also offer it to yourself,
Yeah, yeah,
and see yourself as a fully integrated human who has imperfections, but in the pursuit of becoming better and becoming really the best version of yourself that you can possibly become in your lifetime. And
yeah.
that requires offering yourself a whole lot of grace, mixed with some forgiveness, some resilience, determination, courage, and I think above all things, love. I
Yeah.
think love is a superpower.
Yes, indeed.
That's gratitude. I think gratitude is a superpower where
Yep.
you are be grateful for the wisdom and overcoming the failures, and grateful that the story's not over and there's
Yep.
still more. Right?
Yep. 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 A good friend of mine is famous for saying, that gratitude is the echo of grace.
Mm.
And that is so true. That is so true. And when we're able to step out of a pain narrative, because that was my narrative, pain over my parents' relationships, and I was able to step out of that and step into quality time with dad, even though that time was not enough, it was cut far too soon. It was still time that transformed me, and that has impacted how I go about making sure I have enough time with my kids and grandkids today.
Yeah. Joe, I want to thank you for taking time tonight to have this conversation. I think it's been a gift. This will be recorded and offered to community in a variety of different ways. But there's some really important takeaways that you've given us, starting with the vision of a church in Washington, D.C., Emory Fellowship, with 400 working class people living in community, seeing the community as the congregation, taking on the vision of a $60 million project to provide affordable housing in the community for people who work in the city but otherwise were not able to live in it. But that vision required resilience, patience, and positioning yourself to be in relationship with the right people. So it wasn't about the money, it was about having a clear vision.
Yeah.
Knowing your purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Writing the vision, being patient, and then realizing that resources are available. So the question is, where do we position ourselves so that we can access the resources?
Yep.
Provision follows vision. Then you need patience. And then you need to position yourself where the resources are so that the vision can come to pass.
Yep.
You also talked about the importance of family, knowing the whole story, and holding that story as one fully integrated story of a person with grace, love, forgiveness, and also the gratitude for the wisdom and the lessons, and understanding that the story's not over, that you are still in your own process of becoming. And life isn't just about healing from past pain, but it's also about leaning into thriving.
Yep.
And you are someone who truly exemplifies what leaning into a life of thriving looks like, and that you don't do it alone, that you do it in community, and you create opportunities for other people to thrive as well. And so I thank you for that, brother. And
Man, you're welcome. I'm humbled. I'm humbled and grateful to be with you, man. Thank you so much.
yeah,
Really am.
yeah, man. So we'll talk soon, and I'll definitely reach out when I get back in town. For everyone watching now, for those who will watch this content later, I hope that it was of value to you, and I'll continue to do these lives with other great leaders like Joe, so you can hear these stories and glean some insights that will be useful to you on your journey. So until the next time, peace. Thanks, man. Bro.
Love you too, man. Love you too. Thank you, bro.
All right, peace.
Peace.